Hello and welcome to another episode of Mastering Adam, Becoming the Best Adam for Your Eve. My name is Casper Stockham, and I have an awesome guest that I'm going to be introducing you to in just a second. I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors. It's I Am Love Builders. And okay, looks like, give me a second here. I had something pop up on my screen. I apologize. Give me a second. Okay. Oh, it looks like our Facebook feed kind of crashed on me. So we won't be live on Facebook this time, but we are live on X. We're live on YouTube and on LinkedIn. All right. So our sponsors, I Am Love Builders. And that's my wife and I. We wrote a book and we released it back in August called Divorce Proofing Your Marriage. And we are fortunate that it hit the hot new release list for a quick second. So we're excited about that. We also have a new program we are launching, and it's called the MVP Partners Call. It's going to start on the 13th of January. We're excited about this because we are Christian marriage coaches, and we want to help as many couples as possible divorce proof their marriage, right? So we have these live calls. We're going to have the live call on the 13th, but right before that, we're going to do a free training, the MVP Huddle. It's a free training. We're going to talk about relationship stuff for about 15 minutes. And then we're also going to have highlights, MVP highlights, and those will be 1 or 2 minute relationship tips that we'll be putting out as well. All right, so I'm going to bring on my guest here, Mr. Jimmy. You see him, but so Jimmy McPhee is an ordained minister and a returning citizen from a 45-year prison journey. We're going to be talking about his story today on Mastering Adam because it's a powerful story. He's co-authored 3 prison-written books, and you can find him on ontherocksjimmy.org. And he's on his anniversary vacation on top of that. So Jimmy, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see you again, my friend.
Yes. So Jimmy, he's going to tell us his story, and his tagline is "Death Road to Abundant Life." You have to listen to this story, and I'll be asking him questions throughout the show. So Jimmy, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Casper. You know, a testimony is really never about how bad we've been, but about how good God has been to each one of us.
Amen.
And I always want to immediately stake the claim that this is a Jesus story. It's not a Jimmy story.
Yeah.
How blessed I am to be able to share His grace and mercy in my life. And speaking of mercy, I'm going to begin with a short scene, if I may.
Uh-huh.
I was 20 years old, standing before a circuit court judge in a small county in South Carolina on October 30th, 1975. The judge presiding that day informed me that for the crime that I was convicted of just a few minutes before, murder in the commission of armed robbery while armed with a deadly weapon, between the hours of 5 o'clock in the forenoon and 5 o'clock in the afternoon of December 21st, 1975, I would be sentenced by the state to be executed by electrocution in South Carolina's electric chair. The very last words the judge uttered to me that day were these: "May God have mercy upon your soul." I received it in that moment, not as a blessing, but as a statement, almost a curse, as if to say, I don't have any mercy for you, maybe God will. Why the broken thinking I had, the anger? Well, I think a beautiful picture of that is as I turned from the judge, I saw my father standing in the front row of the courtroom that day. He seemed to age 20 years in the moment that those words echoed around that courtroom.
And how old were you then?
I was 20 years old.
Wow.
And as those words kind of echoed, I remember how, not fearful, but how angry, how shame and guilt would rule my life for years to come from that day. It also fueled my rage. Because you see, as a young man, as a youngster, actually, I learned to internalize my pain and hurt into anger. The first voice I remember in my life was my dad. And my dad was a good man, but he was a hard man. I like to say that he worked hard and he provided well, but he also drank hard, he womanized hard, he gambled hard, he lived life hard.
Wow.
Now, he was married 6 times. My mother was his third wife. And you may wonder why I didn't mention her first, but my father first. Well, I was only 15 months of age when she walked away, leaving my father, the man I just described, to raise me.
Yeah.
By the time of age 12, 3 more stepmothers had come and gone. And I remember hearing loud voices in the night, doors slamming. Sometimes somebody would be gone the next morning, usually someone I had placed my trust in, like a new stepmother or even my father.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would be the one. I was scooped up in the middle of the night as a kid and find myself the next morning in another household.
Wow.
The instability of that over time, of course, bred 2 feelings, one of insignificance and a sense of deep instability, insecurity. Where was I going to be next? Who was going to be there? Was anybody going to be there? But the blessing that came from that over time was that school and sports would become my sanctuary.
Yeah.
Came pretty easy to me. I turned into a 2-sport athlete in football and baseball, actually an honor roll student by my junior high school years. So I adjusted well. And I think it was my way of finding a sanctuary away from the battleground that we call home.
Sure.
I can even remember walking down the street as a youngster, 9 or 10 years old, and I'd get near my house and I would look at a vantage point where I could see if my father's car was in the driveway, and I would actually be relieved that it wasn't.
Wow.
And I would have peace and quiet, at least for a while.
Yeah.
So, because chances are he's going to come home maybe a bad day gambling or in business, and he was mean when he drank, and he drank about every day.
Yeah.
And not to say that this man didn't love me. He did the best he had with the tools that he had, but they were passed down generationally, and I'll just kind of leave it there for right now.
Yeah.
But by the age of, I guess, 15 or so, I got a job outside the home, and my father encouraged me to kind of be able to take care of myself, and it was a full service gas station. You may remember some of those that we don't.
Yeah.
I did the windshields, checked the oil, pumped the gas, all that. And it was a wonderful job, but it also, because of the hours I worked after school and weekends, it began to draw me away from both school and sports. But it also drew me to a different crowd,
Yeah.
an older crowd. Let's just say ones that either had dropped out of school or just older ones who had lived a different lifestyle than what you would consider a healthy one, a worldly based approach to life. So it wasn't long before I was experimenting with marijuana and drinking. And very quickly over the next couple of years, the drinking went from beer to hard liquor.
Yeah.
Because whatever I tried never satisfied the emptiness that I felt within me.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it then.
Yeah.
It's the same thing even as I began to commit small crimes. I actually, they were going to kick me out of school, allowed me to take a GED. I passed a GED at 16, and out into the world I went.
Wow.
I went full bore into the world. And my life quickly became one party after another, and then one drug deal after another to support my partying. And then as the arrest began to mount, one prison cell after another.
Wow.
Lawlessness and just inability to live a disciplined life. By the time I was 19, I'd been arrested several times, and I was given a 3-year sentence, of which I served 1 year. But that 1 year didn't make me better, Casper. It made me very bitter.
Yeah.
I came out of there more angry, more broken. The senselessness, the wanton violence, the having to fight to survive in there, it changed me. The change was not good. And 14 months after entering prison, I emerged. I call it a ticking time bomb.
Mhm.
disguised as a 20-year-old kid.
Yeah.
2 weeks after my 20th birthday, or 2 weeks before my 20th birthday, I was released, and the bomb ticking, ticking, ticking. 4 months and 7 days after my release, the bomb exploded,
Mm.
and I shot two men. I seriously wounded one and took the life of the other in an armed robbery, as I just described earlier, and I was sentenced to South Carolina's death row for my crime.
Wow.
The very next morning, I was escorted to Old Central Correctional Institution. At that time, it was one of the most dangerous prisons in the southeast of America, the most dangerous in the state of South Carolina at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember, just if I may paint a little picture here, I remember being escorted on this long, 3 stories high cell block of
Mhm.
cells as far as you could see
Sure.
that contained the death row, the men. And it was there with a guard on each one of my elbows. I was shackled, and my legs shackled, and my hands cuffed to belly chains.
Yeah.
I shuffled down the long row of tiers and cells until they told me to stop. Opened the cell door, told me to step in, and bam, slammed the door behind me,
Mhm.
and told me to remain with my back to them so they could reach through the bars and take the chains off.
Right.
And there, I kind of observed my new home, if you will, a little yellow bulb up in the corner of a 10 by 12 foot cell, just a combination toilet and sink in another corner, and the rest of the cell pretty much taken up with a bunk bed that was mounted to the floor,
Yeah.
and just enough space, I would find out, to take 5 paces.
Mm.
5 paces and turn.
Yeah.
5 paces and turn, because
Wow.
basically that was the boundary set by my poor, angry choices as a young man. The very next morning, a little Oriental man appeared at my door, and this is how he introduced himself. He had a little book cart, and he had books with him, and
Mhm.
he looked at me and he introduced himself. He said, "My name is Frankie Son."
Frankie Son.
Frankie Son, yeah.
Okay.
Frankie his name is Kuzo Maishi, as I would find out years to come, but that was a nickname the prisoners gave him.
Mhm. Oh, Frankie Son. Got it. Got
Frankie
it.
Son, yeah. Son being, of course, a term of respect
Sure.
for in Japan, where he came
Right.
from. And he introduced himself this way. He said, "My name is Frankie Son. I love you, and Jesus loves you.
Mm.
He doesn't care what crimes you've committed. He will forgive you if you let him." Basically, the gospel in a couple phrases.
Yeah.
And it was his way of letting me know someone's here. Well, in my angry state, very broken, very angry, my response to all the pain that I was going through in this situation and the fear was channel it into anger and then act out on it.
Yeah.
Well, I was polite to him. Besides that, I was a reader. He had books.
Right.
He was in a very kindly, you could see the compassion in this man's eyes.
Yeah.
But I kind of gave him a polite stiff arm, as I used to when I played football, and say, "No, thank you, but no thank you."
Yeah. Yeah.
And he went on his way, but he would continue to come. And turned out he would, imagine this, an Oriental man in a South Carolina prison,
Mhm.
raised in Japan, would come to the prison cell blocks weekly to see the guys.
And he was not a prisoner?
He was not a prisoner. He was
Okay.
started as a volunteer.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell more of that story as we go forward.
Okay.
As he came, he brought, his intent was to bring joy and the love of Jesus to the men, to let us know
Right.
that we are not alone in this.
Right.
Casper, if I had to describe or one emotion or state one that could sum up where I felt at that time, the day after coming to death row,
Yeah.
completely alone, feeling, there's a difference between loneliness and feeling utterly and completely alone,
Mm.
forsaken and forgotten by
Yeah.
society. And rejection issues, as you've heard, go back to my childhood. And now I'm here suffering, basically, at that point, the ultimate rejection
Yeah.
by what's known as the greatest country this world has ever known,
Mhm.
And I can remember the anger would flush over me, and I would continue to act out. I would spend my 21st, my 22nd, and 23rd birthdays on death row before, by an act of grace that I did not understand then or did not receive it as that, I was resentenced. All of us on that death row, 26 from death to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole.
Wow.
After serving 10 years. That was a
Okay.
law in effect for my crime. When they overturned the death penalty statute, then they had a sentence to what was generally applied to your crime. You see?
Right.
So here I am now at 23 years of age and being now released to the prison population. Brand new life. You think, man, his guy's faces mortality. He's got it back. I know he's praising God now.
No.
No chance. I figure I got a lucky break,
Yeah.
let me know what I'm doing, Well, the prison I described earlier, a little bit more, if I may, it was built back in the 1800s, and it was built to hold 600 men. Over time, they added on to it.
Yeah.
At the time that I arrived there in 1975 and in 1978, when I was actually released to the prison population, there were over 2,000 inmates packed in those cells designed for 600.
Right.
So we're talking about extreme stress, very violent, dog eat dog world.
Yeah.
And one where we had a simple saying: it's better to be caught with a knife than without one.
Right.
Because fist fights win knife
Hey,
fights. It's just
yeah. Hey, Jim, just so you know, we have 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure people get the outcome of all the challenges that you went through. I want to make sure we leave them, with the positive.
I got you.
Your positive story.
Well, as the years went on in prison, I actually didn't get better. I got worse. The very things I so disdained in my first sentence, for instance, the wanton violence and people taking advantage of other, I became that over the next decade and a half in prison.
Yeah. Until
in the year 1993, I've been in prison 18 years. They locked me away in solitary confinement for my violence within prison.
Okay.
I was that lost, that broken. They didn't even want me on the prison yards anymore.
Right.
In 1995, after pacing another concrete cell, just as a death row had been 5 paces in turn, I was almost 40 years of age, so tired, so lost. And I remember a little Japanese man that used to come to my cell door on death row. I decided I couldn't see any, had no one that could see me there, but I just sat down and wrote him a letter. And I told him how lost and broken I was. I wanted something else in my life. I just didn't know what.
Right.
3 days later, I got a response to my letter.
Wow.
And it opened up just like this. So, Jimmy, I love you and Jesus loves you. He doesn't care what crimes you committed. He will forgive you if you let him.
Yeah.
With all your brokenness, all your anger, all your hatred, all your addictions.
Yeah.
Drop them at the foot of that cross, and Jesus will begin the healing.
Yeah.
Well, I received the letter okay, but having the kind of distrustful childhood I had, inability to trust others, and something else too. We tend to see our Father in heaven as we see our fathers on earth. My father was a distant man. He was one that didn't give a lot of affirmation, pats on the back, you did a good job, and a distant man, But what God did for me to help me to better understand is put a kindly, gentle, loving, compassionate man in my life.
Right.
I witnessed his walk over years, and then through those letters would tell me things like, Jimmy, I believe in you. You can do good things.
So you had constant correspondence with him in there. Okay. All right.
Back and forth. The letters were about weekly.
Okay.
Sometimes 8 and 10 page letters as I would move forward.
Wow.
But at last I sat down in a cold concrete bunk and I just dropped my head and said, God, I give to you what I haven't been able to manage all of these years at 40 years of age.
Wow.
And that's my life. And I promise you that as I surrender my life to you today, that from this day forward, I will give you utterly and completely my heart. And I went on to confess many of the things I'd done, how sorry I was for the most precious thing in this world is a human life, the life I'd taken, that people I'd hurt over years.
Yeah.
And I began to cry as I began to confess my sins, Casper. And it's amazing, when the tears stopped, I had a sense of peace like I didn't know could possibly exist in this earth.
Right.
Not even as a little boy. And I began to read my Bible. Letters continued to go back and forth, and I studied and learned. And the book of John, wonderful book, one of my favorites in the Gospels. He just kept talking about this thing called truth.
Hmm.
And of course, he says, "I am the way, the truth, and life, and
Yeah.
no one comes to the Father except through me." John 8:31 and 32, and he says, "If you abide in my word, you will know the truth.
Yeah.
Then, abide in my, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free."
Right. Right.
Hey, that didn't sound real good to me in a solitary confinement cell,
Right.
but in my spiritual immaturity, I was seeing that more as I was looking for a physical key. But what I found there, and through those letters and continue to read the word, was that truth. And that
Right.
truth was the key that I needed to unlock that rusty heart that had been hardened over those years,
Right. Right.
And the ultimate truth, found, I like the Matthew 28 version where Mary Magdalene and the other Mary go to the tomb, and the angel sitting on the rock and rolled out in the rock. And he said, "Jesus is not here.
Right.
He has risen just as he said he would."
Right.
And those
Okay.
words.
So yeah. Okay. So you're giving your life to Christ, God in Christ in the cell. You start to really get into the Bible and the Word. So now, how does that give us a quick rundown of how that person now that's saved? How do you get from saved to being out of prison now with your own ministry and married and on anniversary?
Yeah. How did I get from in that crying in that concrete cage, basically, to where I'm sitting today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful Hilton Head, South Carolina, by the
Right.
way. And when God showed me in the Bible how Jesus rose, my
Mhm.
first thought was, I too can rise.
Right.
And it's a message for all of us. Yes, we rise eternally, but because of what he's done, we can live forever. But we also know he's going to give us a quality, a joyful, peaceful, loving life in the interim.
Yeah.
And that when I grasped that concept in Frankie Son's continued letters, I spent 5 more years in solitary confinement educating myself. I read
Okay.
books upon books, from psychology to philosophy to history to theology. I
Okay.
read and read and read. Released from solitary confinement in the year 2000. I've been in prison 25 years, Casper.
Yeah.
I spent 16 years in solitary confinement.
Wow.
When I was released to the prison population that time, I
Mhm.
was looking for people I could help. I became a teacher, a mentor, and a discipler of Christ for the next 2 decades in prison.
Okay.
Going up for parole every 2 years, all this time.
Mhm.
Parole board steady slamming the door, and I'm just continuing to walk free in a
Yeah.
prison yard.
Yeah.
In fact, I told the parole board in 2015, I've been in prison 40 years, and I told them this. I said, I don't know what your decision will be today, but whatever that decision is, I will be at peace with it, because I at last understand that I was never ready to leave prison until I was ready to stay.
Mm.
I was walking in freedom regardless of
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
circumstances were.
Yeah.
And
How were the guards and the warden and the different prison officials? How were they perceiving you and treating you?
Well, it took a while, obviously, for people to, they see a lot of so-called conversions or
Yeah.
jailhouse religion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
see, the problem with that term jailhouse religion, it's not the jailhouse, it's the religion,
Mm.
relationship.
Right.
And that's what I developed with Jesus as I continue to move forward, helping people, teaching, mentoring, helping gangbangers, bringing gangbangers to the Lord.
Mhm.
People saw it in
Yeah.
evidence and watched it over years and years
Yeah.
and then decades. And so I went before the parole board after graduating Bible college, and I want to share this real quick. Only 15 inmates a year were chosen to be enrolled in a Bible college 2-year intensive course to
Mhm.
be trained, get your degree, and then sent out to be peacemakers and bring light to the prison yards.
Okay.
I was one of 15 chosen in the year 17, graduated, sent out on my mission. 3 months later, I went before the parole board my 18th time, 44 years, 9 months, and 20 days after I was sentenced to die in
Wow.
South Carolina's electric chair. And the parole board came back with its answer. Mr. McPhee, your parole has been granted.
Wow.
And I was released just a month later to a reentry program, Christian
Mhm.
reentry program in Spartanburg, South Carolina,
Mhm.
and would be ordained as a minister 8 months later, hired as a corporate chaplain a month after that, just through ties I had with
Yeah.
various ministries
Yeah.
over time. Would go on to my ministry now is threefold. One, to share the gospel and what I'm doing right now, Christ's redeeming power of that blood that
Yeah.
he can change anyone, no matter how broken we are.
Yeah.
His love is greater than our biggest mistake, I promise you,
Mm-hmm.
and his grace. The
Mm-hmm.
second part of my ministry is I can't walk out of prison after 45 years and not look back.
Yeah.
We have a prison ministry right now, not only letters and receiving calls from guys, but
Mm-hmm.
we actually financially support the ongoing Bible education of men who graduated the program as I did.
Yeah.
And now when their bachelor's work, we actually have one in his graduate work. And I call it a win-win-win. It's a win
Yeah.
for the individual, building them to be more powerful disciples and give them a leg up upon their return to society.
Yeah.
But also the impact they're having in the prisons to change them from Christian criminal culture to Christian culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third winner, of course, is when they return home, they're staying home.
Yeah.
And the recidivism rate actually in South Carolina is one of the lowest, if not the lowest, in the United States right now because of various programs, Christian based, and
Yeah.
educating these guys and bringing them home, with legs to stand on. And so what I continue to do today, you mentioned me being married. It's just amazing. Been married 1 year this week. I'm on my little vacation now for our wedding anniversary. A blessing down here on the islands, just to celebrate from a friend and just celebrate life and celebrate what God's done in my life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Go ahead, Casper.
No, I was just going to say when I came through Spartanburg, because there was a PJ Net TV Christian conference, and you spoke there, and I was actually the MC, not by an original choice, but the other MC got sick or something, so I became the MC. But
did a fine job too, I might add.
Thank you. Yeah, so I got a chance to actually meet you in person there and heard your story for the first time, and I've been telling your story ever since then, because I have people in my life that are going through challenges, not necessarily the exact same challenges, but some of them have been incarcerated and so forth. And I said, look, you need to look up Jimmy McPhee, check out his story. I'm telling you, there is hope for all of us, and there's hope for you. That you don't have to keep living in that scenario. You can be free from it.
Yes.
So I tell your story all the time. Now, I didn't have all the details correct, so I'm glad we had a chance to have you on the show. So now I have it recorded. So if I ever forget, I can come back.
There you go.
And remember, you were in prison for how long? For
44 years, 9 months, and 20 days. But I did, if you remember, I served a year and a little more than a year. So I've actually served 46 years altogether.
46 years, right? So after 46 years of being in prison, from a murder situation, being on death row, to being in life in prison, to doing prison ministry, and now out, married, on your anniversary, and serving the Lord in big ways there in Spartanburg, South Carolina. That is phenomenal.
Well, the third leg, by way of our ministry, as I said, sharing the gospel, prison ministry, is answering to our at-risk youth. I speak to many programs in this area, going to schools. We're now trying to get in the DJJ, which is the Department of Juvenile Justice, to share my story of voices and choices. The voices we listen to determine our choices, and our choices determine our life. My biggest mistake as a youngster was not so much the one led to me going to death row, but me turning my back on the people God had in my life. And my message to the youth are: you may not feel some days you're not, loved as much as you want to be or paid the attention, but someone is there.
Yeah.
There were people in my life. I chose to turn my back on them. My message to them is: press into those hugs God's supplying for your life, because He's got a plan and purpose. Just like Frankie's son told me, you can do good things.
That is phenomenal, Jimmy. I appreciate you being on the show. We are actually at the top of the hour. I knew it was going to go fast, and I told you that's why I wanted to just have you just kind of share your story with my audience, because it's such a powerful story. So I am happy that we deviated from our normal schedule to kind of have this conversation and listen to your story. I really appreciate you, Jimmy.
I thank you very much for the opportunity, my friend.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I'll be back in that part of the country, because I have a family. I have a great grandson in North Carolina. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be swinging back through there. So I look forward to seeing you.
My bucket list is seeing the the mountainous West out there where you're from. So we're going to
Okay.
have to
Well,
work that out
you're
sometime.
welcome to come out anytime.
All
Anytime,
right.
my friend.
Thank you, brother.
I appreciate you. I
Been
appreciate
a
you.
really honor to be on your program today, too. You're doing
Amen.
great things. And I really appreciate what you're doing for the kingdom, sir.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. So, folks, I wanted to leave with you with this information. We have a free 5-minute and a 20-minute love assessment on our I Am Love Builders web page. We want you to become MVPs. MVP is the most valuable partner in your relationship. Now, it's not a competition with your spouse or your partner, but what it is you need to be the best person. As Jimmy was talking about, he had to work on him, right? So we need to be the best person for our spouse and vice versa. Our spouse is working on that as well. So we have a series of trainings that we are launching. We have MVP Huddle, which is free 15-minute training we'll do twice a month. We have highlights that we'll be putting out. Those are also free. And then we have the MVP Partner Call that we'd love for you to become MVPs and join us. So we will see you on the next show. And the next show, by the way, my wife is going to be joining me on the last episode of Mastering Adam because we are going into a new series in January. But it's going to be an exciting time. So we'll see you guys on the next show.